Welcome back to Occasional Randomness. I'm your host, Eric Scott, and joining me, as always, is my fellow co-host, someone who is not a vigilante by night, Jason Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely not. Just hold on a second while I put on this ancient amulet. It's really just a family heirloom. Nothing to worry about.
So are you the mythical Florida man?
I can neither confirm nor deny. He gets up to a lot of stuff, so probably I can't take credit for half of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's many Florida man.
Yeah, we contain multitudes.
They are legion, yes. All right, so last time, if you were paying attention, we said we would do our usual next episode of our journey through the Farscape TV show, plus the first three episodes of the new Marvel Disney Plus show Daredevil Born Again. But having looked at all that, that was probably way too much to cram into one podcast. So we're going to stay topical and just cover Daredevil this time around. Farscape will always be there. It floats around the streaming services. I think it's back on Amazon now, also. So don't worry, it's going to be there. We'll get back to it.
Yeah, moral of the story is never believe anything we say.
That's right. Watch the show notes.
That's
Otherwise,
right.
episode title. That's what we're doing. Otherwise, we're just making things up here.
That's the whole gig, right?
Exactly. That's the point. So, on that note, on to Daredevil Born Again, or which you might as well call Daredevil Season 4, but, different streaming service, different rules. So, what are you going to do?
Well, as we mentioned in one of our last Marvel discussions, see Agatha, it's not like they feel the need to name the seasons of shows as such, right? So, Agatha is we'll call it a spiritual successor to WandaVision, and I guess that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, and we'll see when they do the second of the 9 episodes, when they split up this season into 2 seasons, are they going to call it Daredevil Born Again Season 2 or something else? Who knows? We'll find
Born
out.
again.
Yeah, Born Squared. Yeah.
Wait, that actually may work.
Math. Wait a minute.
I was promised there would be no math.
And as always, a little PSA here. If you like what we do, please give us a like or a review, or better yet, spread the word. Let everybody know about us. We'd appreciate it. Alrighty, so I guess we'll just do our little alternating little mini recaps here and then get into the good stuff.
Do you want me to start off so you can come in on the commentary?
Sure, why not?
All right. So we open up with Daredevil Born Again, Season 1, Episode 1, Heaven's Half Hour. Say that 3 times fast. While out celebrating their associate Cherry's retirement, Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, and Karen Page, remember them, are ambushed by Benjamin Poindexter, aka Bullseye. Foggy is killed in the attack, causing an enraged Matt to drop Dex off a roof, where Cherry discovers Matt is the masked vigilante Daredevil. A year later, Matt's retired as Daredevil and partnered with former District Attorney Kristen McDuffie. Karen, meanwhile, has moved to San Francisco, and Dex is given a life sentence for his crimes. Kristen sets Murdock up on a date with therapist Heather Glenn, and the two hit it off. After gaining enough signatures with his wife Vanessa's support, Wilson Fisk decides to run for mayor of New York City on an anti-vigilantism campaign. While meeting with Murdock, Fisk assures him that he was not involved in Foggy's murder and kept his promise to not hurt Murdock's friends. When Murdock warns Fisk that he will retaliate if he steps out of line, Fisk counters that there will be consequences if Matt resumes his activities as Daredevil. On his second date with Heather, Matt learns that Fisk has won the election. While celebrating his victory, Fisk reveals to Vanessa that he learned she cheated on him.
And then we get episode 2, Optics. Matt decides to represent Hector Ayala, who is accused of assaulting and killing a police officer, undercover cop named Shanahan. However, in reality, Hector fought Shanahan and his associate Powell to stop them from beating a man named Nicky Torres, unaware that the pair of undercover cops were corrupt police officers. And not before Shanahan tripped and fell in front of a moving subway car. Ick. With Cherry's help, Matt discovers Hector is the vigilante White Tiger, who took justice into his own hands after Daredevil's disappearance. While attempting to improve his optics, see episode title, during his first days as mayor, Fisk learns from Ben Urich's niece, young journalist Bibi, that New York Police Department Commissioner Gallo, who is well aware of Fisk's criminal past, like most everybody else in New York, is poised to resign in protest of Fisk becoming mayor. Fisk threatens to expose Gallo's infidelity to force him back into office. And to deal with the pressures of the press, Fisk and Vanessa start attending couples therapy with, of course, Heather as their therapist. Matt tracks down Torres and helps him escape from other corrupt officers coming to kill him.
Dropping us into episode 3, The Hollow of His Hand. Fisk's old business associates take advantage of his absence to begin a gang war over the territories. Vanessa sends Fisk's right hand man, Buck Cashman, awesome name, to ease tensions between the gangs, while Fisk believes they should just let them kill each other. Although Cherry is successfully able to bring Torres to Hector's trial, Torres is intimidated by the police and commits perjury by testifying that he was never assaulted. With no other options, Murdoch reveals Hector's identity as the White Tiger in open court, despite initially pushing against it. With new witness accounts and police records detailing Hector's heroic deeds, Murdoch and Duffy successfully convince the jury to declare Hector not guilty on all charges. Fisk denounces the results of the trial and vows to uphold his stance on anti-vigilantism. While on patrol as White Tiger, Hector is murdered by a man wearing the Punisher's skull emblem. So, all right, that was a lot. Big opener there. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, so yeah, we're a third of the way through. I do have some strong words about the opening of episode 1 that we'll get into here in a second. But yeah, overall, I mean, since, it's been what, 7 years since the last Daredevil season, it's off to a interesting start. So, we can get more into it. But yeah, what do you think about it so far?
So yeah, I probably have similar thoughts, but I'll start off by saying I'm really glad to have this show back. This was one of our both of our I think favorite series when it was on the Netflix days, and it's just really good to have a Daredevil back on Disney if so we can have it back.
Yeah, I would say like of all the Marvel Netflix shows, Daredevil being first, but that didn't matter. It was the best of the what, five of them? If you count Defenders, yeah, I guess five of them, right? So,
Yeah, there were 5,
yeah, so
and then
Daredevil's always my favorite. Plus, the
plus Punisher, right?
Punisher being the next favorite, which that's where we met. Flashback in the day when we were doing the podcast on another podcasting network. We did all 2 seasons of the Punisher together with other people.
And a host of other random TV episodes. So yeah,
Yeah, right. So yeah, so it's back, and it's almost like it never left after many rewrites and changes of things, which we'll get into here in a second. But yeah, so I guess what, a couple years ago when they announced that they were going to redo Daredevil on Disney, or maybe when I saw like some synopses of it, you know, they didn't have the old crew in it. All they had basically they carried over Matt and Fisk, which those are the two main characters that were floating around in the Netflix show. So of course you have to keep them, right? Because that's where all the tension is. But no Karen or Foggy, which obviously they built the entire Netflix series around like them and Matt, and then later on when they introduced the Punisher in season 2 of Daredevil, Karen became integral to his plot line, and she was in the Punisher seasons, on and off here and there. So I was like, you can't have them not be in this new series. So I was kind of happy when they said they were reshooting chunks or parts of what they had shot so far, and that they're coming back. I'm like, fantastic. Opening of episode 1 here. They're all hanging out in Josie's. They got her back. Everybody's having a good time. They're doing what they did in a Netflix show. Everything's wonderful. It was just like they never left us for 7 years. And then, like, what, 5 minutes into it or 10 minutes into it, as soon as Foggy got shot, I'm like, oh, okay, so much for that. It's just cameos to appease the fans. We're going back to our original plot line. So I'm like, damn it. So maybe actually, Karen is coming back, I guess, later in, I guess, the next season, but I don't know if her cameos are done for this season. Hopefully not, since the Punisher is going to show up, and she and him had a nice relationship going on the Netflix stuff. So I would hope they would bring her back for some of that, but that's probably not what they reshot. So I'm guessing probably not. And then supposedly I heard that Eldon Henson, Foggy, is somehow in later episodes of the season, or since they split up the seasons to two 9-episode seasons, maybe he's coming back in season two. I don't know how you do that since you killed him rather graphically. I don't know, flashbacks, like a vision, because Matt's Catholic, so maybe he's got some kind of like vision of Foggy coming back and warning him, or whatever. Who knows, right? Or if you want to take the title of this series literally, Born Again, maybe Foggy gets resurrected. I don't know. We'll find out, right?
Well,
But
we've seen the Hand do that before.
yeah, I mean, he can come back as a hand zombie ninja, which that's the part of season two on my rewatch of Daredevil I skipped watching. But anyway, but I mean, overall, okay, fine, I get it. I mean, it was better to show how Nelson Murdoch and Paige, because she's now on on the logo of the business. So it's good to show how they kind of fell apart, and that Matt, later was in a new firm with a new partner, and they're gone. So it's better to show that than just not show it and kind of have him offhandedly say, "Yeah, it fell apart and we all went our separate ways." But it still kind of pisses me off. So, how about you?
Yeah. So similarly, I really enjoyed having our old crew back together. Everybody's seemed to be in a great place. We get that opening scene, man. The relationships were just like perfect.
Hmm.
Foggy's being the confident Foggy. Talking up the there's a DA that goes on to be Matt's
Matt,
new
yeah,
partner. So
partner. Yeah.
Matt and Karen are there with the good, slightly romantic tension friendship thing they had going on. It was just such a nice setup. And yeah, kind of like you were saying, they became such a huge part of the first versions, right? The Netflix versions. I mean, yeah, it was called Daredevil, and Matt was the central figure, but there was a lot of stories around what happened with Foggy and what happened with um, Karen. With working with the what was it, the Tenant storyline and all that,
Hmm.
and Karen and the Punisher. So yeah, that they really became integral characters just on their own. And yeah, my understanding, kind of same as yours, is that there was a big bit of recutting and changes that went on between the original plan and this. And I think that's what we actually got here. I think this whole opening part was part of the reshoot and recut. Um, and Foggy and Karen came back as part of that, which is why they're not at this point. We've seen the first three episodes in the rest of the show. Like you said, we're supposed to get them back. My understanding is next season, but it's too early to tell for me if that means flashbacks or, like you said, something else can happen this season to bring them back or get. Obviously Karen can just come back, but a little different, more difficult for Foggy at this point.
Yeah, and I read that originally Matt wouldn't even put on the Daredevil suit until like episode four, which kind of fits the way they've cut it here. Is like maybe like they rewrote like the first third of episode one, right, to bring the old gang back in to say, okay, here's where they were a year ago. Oops, here's what I got from there to Matt and McDuffie law firm and Matt not being Daredevil anymore. So
Yeah,
they had,
because if we didn't have the beginning scene with Daredevil, there's no Daredevil so far other than that.
yeah. So at least they wanted to appease the fans of like, hey, look, Daredevil doing things and stuff, and then oops. So speaking of which, so continue with my nitpicking, which pretty much is going to be done after this. The opening fight scene between Matt and Dex was mostly good, and the biggest thing for me is just like the janky CGI of Daredevil swinging around on his Billy Club line. It just looked so fake. And then Dex throwing like bad CGI knives everywhere. Because he wasn't throwing anything, and people were just acting like they got hit with stuff. And then Daredevil walking around with like 8 knives stuck out of him, like he's Wolverine or something. Like he doesn't even feel it. Like I'm like, it's like you can't see the big knives sticking out of your chest and your arms and whatever. He's just walking around like he's still a little tired and worn out, like for a long fight. But it's just like you're like covered in knives, dude. Like, you know. So I don't know. It seems like for some reason they they get the cheapest effects budget with these Disney Marvel shows for some reason. I don't know what it is. Like that kind of uncanny valley-ish thing with She-Hulk was kind of like, eh. So I don't know. I kind of wish they would have done it most of it with like that one camera, one take thing that they got really good at in the Netflix versions. But okay, to introduce Daredevil again after 7 years, it was good, and especially when we see Matt cross that line. trying to kill Dex by tossing him off the roof after Foggy died, which I mean makes sense. I mean, your best friend got killed, your partner, the guy you've known for what since like college law school, right? So it's been however many 10, 15 years. So, it makes total sense. And as I had said before, I just watched Daredevil season 2 again, except for the Electra hand stuff. I kind of scrolled, fast forwarded through because I wanted to rewatch the Punisher bits since he's going to come back into this season. And back then Matt made a point all the time of trying to get Frank not to kill people. And now here he is like becoming Frank, kind of, right? We don't know yet because he hasn't put the suit on yet with what we've seen so far. But yeah, so we'll see if this comes back with is it Matt going to struggle with killing or not killing now when he puts back on the costume? I don't know. So it could be interesting. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I can see that, and I, I didn't really need the swinging setup. I'll admit I was so caught up worrying about Foggy that I didn't focus on it so much as I was watching it. I I will say that looking back at it, like you said, that one camera thing that we had in the old show would have been perfect for this scene, and it would have been kind of nice to see. Honestly, I didn't even need the suit. I know that was kind of like the requirement, right? We needed some Daredevil because we're not getting a suited up Daredevil. But it'd been kind of cool to almost go back to basics and have him because of the scene, right? He was in the bar. He wasn't going out on mission or whatever you want to call it. So if he'd have just like grabbed the old hat thing and pulled it down over his face, kind of like what he did in the original season, and go from there and just have a fight with him and Dex hand to hand would have been kind of cool. The other part of it that if we're going to nitpick, I don't have a lot of them either. They almost didn't even need to get the same. I don't even know if they did, but assuming they got the same actor back for Dex, right? I couldn't see him well enough. I know it was supposed to be dark and confusing and gas fog and all that, but I struggle with even knowing if I hadn't known from watching the previous seasons, I wouldn't have had a clue what was going on or who that was. So I don't know. That's my nitpick. Is I would have liked to have been able to see Bullseye and actually kind of gotten a feel for who he was and why he was there as a new person.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because yeah, if they would have done it the way they wanted to do it, they would have started off with Matt in this new law firm, and if he didn't know anything, you'd be like, okay, this is just how it is, right? But they try to appease the old fan base from Marvel, from Netflix, and for having it'd be on Disney Plus now. You can watch, the old Netflix stuff. So I guess they wanted to appease the fans of bringing back people from the old series, which yeah, you have to obviously have watched it. Otherwise, you're like, yeah, who's this guy with throwing things and killing people, and why is he just randomly killing people in the bar?
Right.
And who's this guy that got shot and Matt's all broken up about it? So yeah, I mean,
Well,
you kind of have to take the good with the bad, or you kind of have to appease both new people and the rabid fans from before.
but I think even for like I watched this with my wife and she's not. I don't think she saw any of the previous ones. She's not really into the more violent uh, Marvel shows, and she was she was following along on the first part because they do a good job of like the interaction between Karen and Matt kind of introduce you to Foggy, right? And their conversation introduces you to them. And so you kind of get a time of, oh, okay, that's who these characters are. For Dex and Bullseye, whatever Bullseye Dexter, whatever you want to call him, it, Poindexter, it was just like, boom, who's this guy? Why is he here? Okay, he's gone. He dropped off a roof. So
Yeah, just your crazed Marvel villain doing villain things. Okay,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, it could have been the Joker or anybody, and it would have been the same. I know I crossed universes, but I did it intentionally.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, so Foggy's laying there, they fade to black, and you're like, oh, okay, where's this gonna go? And then it's like, 1 year later, I'm like, oh no. So, and Matt's in a new law firm, Murdoch and McDuffie. Oh yeah, that's the person we met at Josie's. Okay, so I guess they a year later, or however long after that, they form their own partnership. Yeah, at least now he's got top billing. Benefits, I don't know. And yeah, and that retired policeman from Josie's now is working for them as an investigator, and at least they set that up to where they don't have to explain or somehow wink wink that he knows Matt's Daredevil because he saw that 1 year ago. So okay, at least I don't have to explain that somehow. And I guess we kind of wrap up our what do you want to call it, prequel, whatever, ode to the past. So we get Matt going to Dex's sentencing where he gets life in prison for what happened for killing what like 14 people or whatever they said, 11 people. Yeah, so I don't know if he's done too. If he's just yeah, like the cameo flashback like Karen and Foggy were, I guess he's done. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know. And then Karen shows up to say she's been in San Francisco and they have an awkward scene together, and she leaves, which we know she'll be back in next season. Hopefully, maybe probably not this season. So I don't know, but okay, out with the old. Here comes the new stuff.
Yeah, and uh, I'll agree with that. I probably struggled more with this part than the opening, so kind of a little bit flipped from you, but mostly because I this was kind of like the final nail in the coffin for me, right? I hated to see Karen leave, and that was like, oh, so we're definitely not gonna like have her in this show. Like it's just at least as an active character in the first part.
Yeah, we will see, but it sounds like that's the kind of the extent of the rewrites for now. Obviously, they brought her on later, so we'll see where that goes. But and then yeah, Matt moves on with his life. He gets set up on a blind date. Blind, get it? With Heather, a therapist, by his new partner. And it's kind of funny how each of them thought that they were there for their professional services. Like he thought she wanted legal advice, and she thought he needed like psychiatrist advice. Which, actually, I'm sure he could probably use some good therapy at this point after the last year he's been through. It's good to get somebody to hang out with and get him out of that funk or whatever's going on in his mind or his repressed feelings with that he's had for the last 3 seasons plus now so that he might be having. So you know seems like it's working out, which is it's nice to see him getting on with his life.
Yeah, one interesting note I'll throw out there is like you say, having somebody to you know care about, and while she's not actually officially his therapist, right? You kind of get that relationship there because if I don't know, if, to me it's kind of interesting that he didn't. There's been no uh, church confessions, right? That was such a huge
Yeah.
part. His Catholicism and his confessions were such a huge part of the other show, and we haven't had any of that yet. So I guess this is kind of filling that niche. I know she's not in on his secret, so mix that with Cherry and being able to have those conversations. But again, he's not actively Daredevil either. But you know what I mean. It'd be interesting to see as he struggles with it, where his outlet is for those thoughts. I'll also admit that after losing Karen in the previous comment, I was resistant to Heather, but I think they're using her just enough. She's not a Karen replacement, right? She's not in all the stuff. She's not in the business. She's not in the every bit of his life that the other characters were. And so I'm coming around to the just enough usage they're using for her.
Yeah, and then, as far as the comics go, I think Heather was in the comics, or McDuffie, or both of them were, but that was way after I stopped collecting, and I don't collect anymore. So yeah, but I think some of this is at least people that comic readers would know too. But we'll see where it
Uh,
goes.
I never came across him back when I was reading Daredevil, but I've also been out of it for a good while, and I made a point not to go look. So
Yeah, yeah, because he always was like, well, that's not the comics. Like, yeah, okay, this is not the comics. Okay. So,
yeah, don't go look up Karen Page there either. So
no, and then we get the second major character of the series shows up, Kingpin.
dun, dun,
Although
dun.
although he's not quite the same as the in control, calm, stoic, you know, killer that he is. I guess they do keep it in this new MCU because uh, he's almost recovered from being shot in the face by Echo at the end of her series. If you watch that, we didn't cover that but anyway, I did watch it and that did happen, and so they kept that going at least. So it's the same universe, whatever you want to call it. But there's signs that he's not quite 100%, which I liked. Like you see like his hands shaking a little bit sometimes. He's kind of timid or cautious with dealing with people versus being the confident in control guy that he was before. So that's kind of cool that he's not quite back to normal or back to 100%, right? Which, I mean, obviously that's not going to last that long because he's the big bad guy, so he's got to overcome his limitations and get back to being mustache twirling evil that, that he is, right? So and we kind of get our little updates with what's been happening in his world. Now apparently Vanessa's been doing basically what he used to do, running the empire while he was recovering wherever he was recovering, and kind of get the vibe that she's not too happy he's coming back, which is kind of cool.
Right, and leads to the fun thought. And I think we get into this as we go through the next some of the other episodes. Is who's actually the Kingpin now? He's been gone. He's been out of the line, and even his intro, right? He walks in and she's at the table with all the crime lords. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic shakes out throughout the season.
Yeah, because will she want to share or will she want to see control back to him, or it's like, this is my thing now, So we'll see. That's also the fun of the season, so we'll see where that goes. And then we get our great scene with Fisk and Matt together at the diner after Fisk announces he's running for mayor on, of course, anti-vigilante campaign, which of course makes sense. You know, get rid of all the people that can oppose him, as he's not going to be your above the board goody two shoes mayor, right? He's still got that kingpin mindset, right? So there's some hidden agenda there somewhere. It's got to be. He's not just doing this because he loves the city and wants to make it a better place for everybody. Kind of funny how he name drops other New York City heroes. So we keep the MCU tie-in going. So good job. He says he's sorry for Foggy, but he had nothing to do with it because he promised. I guess in the last series that he wouldn't go after Matt's friends when he found out that Matt was Daredevil. And of course they end it with a nice threat from each other. Matt tells Fisk that he'll be there if he steps out of line, and Fisk is like, "Well, if you resume your extracurricular activities, I'll be there too." So, and those are some of the best interactions from the Netflix series is when Matt and Fisk were going at it. So, I'm glad that they keep that same thing going in this new series.
Yeah, and it's funny because in this new dynamic, right, with the changes they both had between their last meeting, it's almost like they're the closest thing each of them has to a friend in the current status quo that knows everything about the other, right? So that's kind of interesting to me that they've got that. We're mortal enemies. We you know we're gonna keep each other in check, but we also can sit down and have this kind of a meeting and talk. So I thought that was really cool. I did kind of it just dawned on me where I was kind of feeling like deja vu with this storyline of Fisk running for mayor. I, I'm having like Lex Luthor flashbacks to him running for president in the
Hmm.
DC universe. So that was kind of just clicked in my head that we're kind of having the evil businessman running for office and what that does to the hero who knows the truth about him, right? So a little dynamic parallel there.
Yeah, kind of sets it up for the rest of the season. It's like each other watching each other. Like okay, who's gonna do some? Who's gonna get out of line first? And then I guess in the second episode, which is kind of really the first and a half episode, if you cut out the the opening bit. So yeah, now we get the kind of the direction that this season's going to go. We get our little scene on the subway with the out of costume white tiger, Hector Ayala, trying to be the good Samaritan out of not wearing his costume by helping somebody getting beat up. But I sure wasn't expecting one of the guys to like. I guess they said he tripped, but looked like he ran. I don't know, but anyway, he basically fell into the oncoming train.
He caught a train, yeah.
Yeah, yeah he caught the A train, and that was like ooh icky. And then yeah, now they're like undercover police officers, like ooh uh-oh, So then okay, now we know that, or at least at the time we're like okay, this is gonna set up the season where Matt's gonna become his lawyer and set out to prove his innocence, and we're gonna go back and forth in court all this time. Yeah, not quite. We'll get to it in a minute, but yeah. So, but I don't know. It's kind of like a repeat of what I just watched in season two with Nelson and Murdoch defending Frank Castle. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Although now it's not Matt defending a mass murdering vigilante guy. It's him defending one guy against the whole NYPD who thinks he's a cop killer, which the police never like cop killers, whether the cop is a good or bad cop. You kill one of their own, and now you have Matt defending the cop killer, and now the police don't like Matt. So you know,
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not like this time he's around, he's defending a vigilante of any kind. So,
yeah,
at
it's
least
like
as far as they know until it comes out. So,
yeah, right. It's just a dude that apparently went berserk and started attacking police officers, according to. So. And then yeah, we'll see if we get more of the White Tiger in some form later, or flashbacks or whoever, as we'll talk here in a minute. But I thought it's kind of funny after they figure out that he's the White Tiger, Matt tells the judge and the prosecution lawyer that yeah, hey, we found this out, but I don't want it to come into evidence because that wasn't what he was doing when he was part of this issue, right? So so that shouldn't be admissible into court. And then Matt just offhand drops the line, he wasn't wearing his suit or mystic amulet, and nobody seems to care about mystic amulet. They're like, yeah, sure, happens all the time.
yeah, I mean, We had some aliens. We had you know all that kind of stuff. So yeah, what's one more? Oh, we had the blip, right? So it's New York. Forget it, Jake. Right? So,
Yeah, I think later in court he even says it too, and like the jury's just like, uh-huh.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
no one seems to care about mystic amulet. Like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. It's we all got mystic amulets.
I sold three at a yard sale last
Yeah,
week.
I
So
mean, it's New York. You can buy them on the corner from somebody.
now call me when you get a tesseract, right?
Yeah, right. And then yeah, so the part of episode two here is Fisk settling in as mayor. Obviously he's got some optic issues, as the episode is titled. So some voters love him because he's going to fix the city. Some think he's still a criminal. So he's got to improve his score with the voters, right? So they're in a traffic jam, so he gets out and helps it get moving. Gets the construction guys working. He doesn't go to the funeral for the one cop that got killed by accidentally falling in front of a train because he didn't want to deal with the police commissioner. Although they were kind of there, and the commissioner's like, once a criminal, always a criminal. Get out of here. And that's true. I mean, Fisk. I'm sure is going to get back to being more Fisk-like here, Kingpin-like here in a couple episodes. But and then later the commissioner's going to tell Fisk he's resigning, which probably would have caused some resignations also in the force of them also following his lead. So Fisk is getting back to his old self, and he kind of blackmails him with pictures of his illegitimate kids, like but kind of like yeah, it'd be a shame if something happened to him. So yeah, the Kingpin's coming back. It looks like he's getting screwed back slowly.
Yeah, and a couple sandwiches, but
Yeah, right. Shout out to Philly cheesesteaks. Yeah,
myself, I had to rewatch that scene a couple times to grasp the actual blackmail. I'm guessing from looking at the photos that the chief had an illegitimate son, and that was the risk that he was exposing. Either way, it made for like you say, good characters. I like the chief's character, like the actor who's playing him. So it'll be fun to see maybe if they do more with that as the season goes on. So
for some reason I always picture like if you ever watch that Monty Python skit of like when they're acting like the dumb mafia guys, or they're trying to blackmail like a military uh, colonel, and it's like how many paratroopers you got here, Colonel? Oh, about 1,200. Yeah, shame if someone to set fire to them. It's just like, every time I see one of these like blackmail things, like, yeah, yeah, nice kid. Same if someone to set fire to him.
well, if he was a witch, he's made of wood. So
Yeah, so he would
there's my
float.
Monty Python
Yeah,
tribute there.
so yeah, that's where my mind goes. Too many pop culture references floating through my head at all times. And now, since Fisk keeps talking about his wife in various interviews and stuff, and she's never around, in order to help the press kind of stop hounding him with like, "Hey, how about you and your wife? What's going on here?" They decide to attend couples therapy because I guess Ben Urich's niece, if you remember Ben Urich from first season of Daredevil, the reporter who gets killed by Fisk later. So I guess his niece BB is now following in his footsteps of I guess some kind of video blog or video news thing or whatever she's doing. I don't know, whatever. They don't quite explain it, but so she kind of drops the bomb on like, "Hey, how about you and your wife?" So okay, we need to get our again optics, as the episode title is called, back up with the voters. So they go to therapy, and of course, because why not? The therapist is Heather, Matt's new girlfriend. So I'm sure that will have no impact or nothing will come of that in later episodes at all.
Absolutely not. But I am thinking that the relationship with Vanessa is going to be, as we kind of have hinted around different things, is going to be a large part of the rest of the season, right? On how she fits into Fisk's plans or against them. There's definitely something cooking there. And speaking of BB, I guess it's worth calling out that they use. I'm assuming it's supposed to be her, right? The vlogger that's video segments that they use to kind of set up a lot of the what's happening in the city and what are people saying at the ground level as the rest of our stories taking place around the city. So it's kind of an
Yeah, so,
interesting technique.
yeah, it's like the pulse of the people kind of thing. So it's kind of fun. Yeah. And then yeah, at the end of this episode, we get Matt tracking down the only witness to Hector's side of the story, the guy that was being attacked by the two cops. One of the crooked cops and some other guy shows up and starts beating up on the blind lawyer there. Like, good job, dude. So- and we got our first flash of a Punisher style tattoo on his wrist. And I guess just as that cop's about to shoot him, Matt's like, "No, you don't do that," and then has to give in to defending himself, and he brutally takes out. I thought he killed both of them. I mean,
It's
the way they
same.
looked like it, I'm like, wow, he like snapped his neck. I'm like, okay, he's really gone off the deep end. But at least not the one guy. The second guy, who knows? But obviously the one guy comes back later. But hey, at least Daredevil's kind of back in spirit.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with he didn't end up killing either of them because I think that would have their interactions that happened later in the episode would have been different if
Hmm.
he'd had to actually, or in the next episode rather, would have been different if he'd actually killed one of the cops, right? Because that would have put him as a cop killer too. But yeah, same way. We both were like, oh, he just killed both of those guys. So, and I'm sure that the Punisher tattoos are gonna not be a larger issue going forward, right? That's just a kind of that was just a Easter egg. We'll move on.
Yeah, maybe he's just a fan.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, speaking of which, yeah. So then we get into the last episode of here, season episode 3, season 1. We get the big trial of Hector, which I thought would go longer, but anyway, they no, they wrapped it all up. So, but I don't know, I thought like at any moment Torres, the victim, the witness, whatever, was going to get killed at some point, like either when Cherry was taking him to the van, or when he stepped out of the van at the courthouse. And then continuing that theme, I also thought that Hector was going to get shot inside the courtroom after the verdict, or when they're walking outside afterwards while the press, because it's like the you know Lee Harvey Oswald thing, right? Like he's out in the middle of nowhere and out walking in the crowd, and he gets someone walks up and shoots him, right? But nah, he's fine. Well, until he later goes out on patrol at night later, which Matt said you probably shouldn't do that anymore earlier. Your career's over as a vigilante because now everybody knows who you are. He goes out anyway, but granted, I mean, he probably would have been killed anyway, no matter if he's at home or outside, because that's just where the show's going. So, and maybe it's just me, but I guess after you just, out of the blue, kill a major character in the first 10 minutes of the first episode, now I think that every supporting character, except for Matt and Fisk, are going to die at some point. I don't know. So it's kind of not really clouding my enjoyment of the show, but it's kind of like at any moment I think like, okay, who's gonna get shot next?
So
So
so we thinking that Cherry or Matt's new partner is going to go first. We got to get a pool going.
I don't know. I mean, we got to have Matt getting back in the costume for some reason. Maybe it's you know Hector getting killed here, but I'm like, I don't know. At some point, something's gonna drive him over the edge again. So I don't know. We will see. But yeah, so the ending there, where somebody who blatantly is wearing a Punisher, looks like body armor with a Punisher logo on it, just flat out shoots Hector right in the head. So I guess so much for the amulet. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah, it kind of diminished the power of that amulet. I guess that's why it wasn't such a big deal of a court.
yeah. So yeah, so obviously it's not the real Punisher. It's not Frank Castle, because they've hung lanterns so far, at least in a couple different scenes, that some of the police have Punisher tattoos, like on their wrists, like the guy that was assaulting Matt at the witness guy's house. I think one of the cops at the courtroom had like a Punisher tattoo on his neck, like
Yep.
somewhere. I'm like, that's I don't know if that falls under police, whatever. Anyway, but police proper attire or dress code, but whatever. But so that's where they're going. And even in real life, I think like several years ago, maybe during COVID or right before COVID, it came out that the police and military around the country were wearing Punisher symbols on their vests or shirts or whatever, and Marvel got all annoyed about it. And because the Punisher is somebody that kills criminals without hesitation, and he has no remorse about doing it. So that's not something you want your police or military to be espousing, right? So that's probably where they're going with this. Take things out of the headlines and make it into a story. So some rogue NYPD element is out murdering criminals, and in this case, vigilantes for killing one of their own. You know, and acting like it's the Punisher. And really, what's the drawback, right? What's the real Punisher going to do? Put out a press release or social media post saying it wasn't him? Yeah, right. You know,
Sue for defamation. Yeah.
yeah, right. No
Copyright
one,
infringement.
yeah, no one's gonna believe him, and no one's gonna, take him at face value. So that's probably where the rest of the season, at least this half of the season's going with Matt, and I'm sure Frank will be coming in next episode or two, and they're gonna get pulled into this secret cabal of corrupt police officers, killing criminals and or whatever they're doing and trying to deal with it. So I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, we've had several. like you mentioned earlier, there's officers with the skull, hand and face tattoos, and we kind of finished the first 3 episodes with the person with the full skull, body armor attire, uh, and to kind of loop it all together, the undercover cops that was part of it was the guy that was also one of the guys that Matt uh, had to fight and defend himself against in the apartment. Was also the one that tried to stop the witness from getting to the stand, right? With Cherry kind of doing a misdirect and sending him by taxi, but he pulled over the van. So you kind of definitely got a something going on in the PD there that's going to come back as part of it.
Now the real question is who's behind them, right? Because they're just doing it for their own reason, right? Or it's never just police officers, them just doing it on their own. Someone's got to be doing it. So is it Vanessa?
Right.
You know, I mean that's if you want to do like the economy of characters thing, right? It sounds like that could be it. I don't know. But and in between all this, courtroom drama and assaulting of people, they have some funny scenes. So there's still the humor that they're keeping, right? So it's fun. It's nice. It's not all deadly serious here. Like in the courtroom when Matt had that corrupt officer Powell in the stand, and Matt's kind of like taunting him about his black eye and how he can't take a punch and that kind of stuff. And what's Powell going to do, right? He can't say anything about it because what's he going to do? Admit that he got beat up by a blind dude?
Or that
So,
he was beating up a blind dude.
right, yeah. So not good for your street cred there, dude. You're beating up a guy with a disability.
Well,
So,
and they also had a meetup in the bathroom around the same time, right? Where he tried to threaten Matt there in the bathroom, and Matt's like, are you going to go out and tell them that that's what you were doing? So
yeah, yeah. Go right ahead. Tell him what we're doing last night. Who's gonna believe you? You or me? So, and I guess the big kind of looming thing so far is what do we think Fisk is up to? It doesn't. I don't know. It seems like he doesn't care about his empire anymore, because well, at least not to the extent that Vanessa cares, because now he's the mayor, right? He has to be above the his little empire here, because he can't be linked to it, right? So, but he's still surrounded by people that like know who he is and like are doing things for him, like the aide, like the guy you said had a cool name. I forget his name now, but
oh,
uh,
moneymaker or change? I've lost it.
Cashman, like something.
Cashman,
Yeah.
yeah, Cashman.
So he obviously still knows who Fisk and Vanessa are and what's going on. So and she sends the aide to try and calm things down with the one set of people that are now that the two crime people are families are going at each other. He's trying to calm them down. Okay, you did it. You got to pay this guy $2 million because he did something stupid, or you know how to work for, right? So it's like, well, who do you work for, Fisk or Vanessa, right? So, but I don't see Fisk being behind the Punisher police cabal thing, at least not yet, because that's he said he wouldn't. Well, he said he wouldn't harm Matt and his friends. He didn't say he wouldn't harm other vigilantes, and but I don't think it's him. Is it Vanessa? I don't know. I mean, like I said before, it's not just out of a vacuum that they're doing this. So unless there's somebody we haven't seen yet, which could be. I mean, it's only been 3 episodes, right? Out of nine, or actually out of 18 that this was, right? Before they cut it into two 9 episode seasons, it could be somebody else. But I don't know. We'll see. It's fun, trying to to play the guessing game.
Right? Yeah. So on my side, I kind of see it like you said. We got a new power struggle going. That's the big piece here. We've got Fisk as mayor trying to let chaos reign. I think he says that at one point, right? It's just like step back and let the chaos do what it will. And then we've got and he's obviously got a motive there somewhere. And we got Vanessa. Now she wants to regain control over the gangs. Kind of, in my opinion, she's operating as the new kingpin, right? She was the had his recovery time, years, whatever it was, where he was gone to kind of build up her control over the mob and the gangsters and stuff. And that's now, they all kind of got up and left when he came back, but I think she's trying to reestablish that. To your point, I think when Cashman went to talk to the guys and they say, who sent you, the mayor? And he's like, or tell the mayor something. He's like, I don't work for the mayor. I work for the man. And I think again that my opinion was Vanessa. So,
Hmm.
or possibly, like you said, maybe a new player.
Hmm.
We've also still not circled back to Adam, which was that possibly an affair while Fisk was gone. They have only dropped the name and kind of hinted around at it. But and it may not be the same. I kind of have vague memories of a storyline where Fisk and Vanessa's son became a crime lord. I think it was called The Rose, but
Yeah.
I can't remember if the name was Adam. I can't remember any details about that, but that kind of sticks in the back of my mind. So there's that. And then that leaves us where Matt's going to go, like you say, post the death of the White Tiger. Is the White Tiger going to return in any form? And where does Frank come back in? Right. So we've got a lot of pieces that are starting to be on the board, but we haven't figured out where they're going yet.
Yeah, and apart from, the first 10 minutes of the first episode, we haven't seen Daredevil, right? So, and then according to what we talked about before, he didn't show up until episode 4, which is coming up now. So, and obviously, yeah, did the death of the White Tiger cause him to, put the suit back on, right, and get back out there? It's like who killed Hector? I believe in him. I worked my butt off to get him, exonerated, and then within like hours he's dead. So that's gonna drag Matt into all this stuff, and of course now we have the Punisher symbol. We're gonna have to go find Frank now, right? Because did you kill my, friend, the White Tiger? Of course not. But you have to have the hero on hero battle kind of thing, right? That's how all these things work, right? So
Oh yeah, you can't introduce somebody without a good fight.
yeah, which harkens back again to season 2 of Daredevil, where like for a whole episode was basically Frank and Matt, with Matt tied up, and Frank and them going back and forth about the ethics of what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. So it's all coming full circle-ish. So we'll see where it goes. Plus, there's been multiple white tigers in the comics, right? So you just have to have the amulet, right? Which that's still around, possibly, if maybe it's his wife, right? I mean, his wife was kind of hanging around, wasn't too thrilled with it, but maybe she'll put
Well,
it on and come back,
if I remember right, it's family related, so it could be. I think she said his sister was who they were living with at the time or whatever,
Yeah.
and there's also his niece. So you've got a couple of characters there. Not to cross the streams, but the White Tiger and that I knew in Spider-Man was female. So
hmm
uh, you've got that going for you. So
Yeah, and plus it'd be cool to have, if Frank wasn't part of this, which the Punisher thing was part of this, so he was coming back. But so yeah, it's good to have more than one or two vigilantes running around. So especially with the Fisk doing the anti-vigilante thing, so you have to have more people there to, take shots at. So
yeah, he's got to have somebody to pick on. He's not certainly going to go after Iron Man or whoever at this point. So
yeah, he can't like kick Thor out of town, right? Although he only name dropped what, Spider-Man, was it Hawkeye, or he kind of alluded to Hawkeye?
probably. I mean, they've got beef at this point.
Because in the Hawkeye show, which if that's the same universe as the TV side, he met up with Hawkeye at the end of the Hawkeye show. So who knows?
Well, that was where Echo came from. So there should be a line
Yeah.
drawn
So,
between Hawkeye to Echo to here.
but yeah. So it's been cool. It's been fun. You know, get to harken back to my love of the Netflix stuff. So definitely in this for the long haul. Loving where it's going. We'll see. So
Yep.
speaking of where it's going, next time we'll probably do the same thing again because we have a lot to talk about as you can probably tell by now with Daredevil. So we'll get
We
through
have
as many.
thoughts.
Yeah, we love it. We like to talk about it. So since there's 9 episodes, we'll probably do the usual split it into 3 episode chunks of 3. So probably next time around we'll do 4 through 6. Which, as of recording this, they actually dropped 2 this week, so actually they're up to 6 now. So basically, that's probably what we're gonna do. We're gonna do 4 through 6 next time,
Yeah,
whenever that
talk
next
to
time it
talk
is.
to you tomorrow night.
Yeah, right. So I'm gonna go watch it right now for 2 hours, and then we'll
well,
reconvene tomorrow. No,
we'll be back at 1 o'clock this morning. How about that? We'll just go ahead and knock it back out.
yeah, we'll do the all nighter. We'll stay up. But yeah, so basically, just as always, check the podcast notes or the title of the podcast, and that's what we're covering. No surprise. We don't hide anything. That's what we do.
And like we said at the beginning, that's probably more reliable than we are.
Yep. So don't take our word for it. Take what we tell you later.
That's right. Yeah. So let chaos reign and have no fear.
There you go.
I had some kind of Man Without Fear reference in there somewhere, right? We haven't said that this season. So
Yeah, I don't think they actually have even said that in any of the shows yet. So they never brought that tagline in yet
yeah,
that I can think
that's what
of.
I always remember. The Man Without Fear.
And they haven't called him like DD or Hornhead either. They haven't got some of the names. Like Frank calls him Red, right? But
Right.
not a lot of nicknames like the
Well,
comics. But hey, whatever.
well, that was where the original Daredevil came from, right? Was the Man Without Fear. Yeah.
hmm
So anyway,
But anyway, we digress. So that's your homework for next time, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.